My name is Olivia, I am 37 years old and I live in Minneapolis. The crystal glasses clinked. My father stood up at the head of the long table. There were 20 relatives watching us. Their phones were out, recording the big moment. I sat very still, my hands folded in my lap. The company, the houses, the $96 million, my father announced, his voice booming through the dining room. It all belongs to Ben. My mother sat next to him, beaming with pride. She looked at me, then at my brother. He deserves it more than you ever did, Olivia, she said. The room burst into applause. Ben grinned. He looked like a king. I felt a cold, heavy weight in my chest, but my face remained calm. I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I simply stood up. The clapping stopped. The room went quiet. I walked to where my father stood. I didn't look him in the eye. I reached into my bag and pulled out 4 items. I set them down on the white tablecloth, one by one. The medical power of attorney, the financial power of attorney, the heavy ring of house and safe keys. And finally, one sealed red envelope. Congratulations, I said to Ben. My voice was steady. I turned around to walk away. Behind me, I heard the sharp sound of tearing paper. My father was ripping open the envelope. I didn't need to turn back. I knew exactly when the screaming would start. But before I tell you how everything flipped, like and subscribe, drop a comment. Where are you watching from? My name is Olivia, I am 37 years old. To understand why that dinner was so painful, you have to understand who I was before. I wasn't just Ben's sister. I wasn't just the woman living in the back bedroom of my parents' house. 5 years ago, I was someone else completely. I lived in Seattle. I had an apartment on the 24th floor with floor-to-ceiling windows. On clear days, I could see the Space Needle and the water. It was quiet, clean, and expensive. It was mine. I was a senior software engineer. I led a team of 12 people developing artificial intelligence for medical diagnostics. I was 32 years old, and I was making nearly $300,000 a year. I remember the last normal day I had. It was a Tuesday. I was sitting in a conference room presenting a new piece of code to our investors. I was wearing a tailored suit. I felt strong. I felt capable. People listened to me when I spoke. They took notes. They respected my mind. After the meeting, my boss, Sarah, took me aside. Olivia, she said, smiling, that was incredible. The board is talking about a promotion, a vice president role. It's yours if you want it. I walked home that evening feeling like I was flying. I stopped at a high-end market and bought a bottle of expensive wine and fresh salmon. I was going to celebrate alone, looking out at my view. I had built a life that had nothing to do with my family's drama or my parents' expectations. I was free. I cooked dinner. I poured a glass of wine. I sat down on my beige sofa and put my feet up. Then my phone rang. It was 9:45 p.m. The caller ID said Mayo Clinic. I stared at the phone. My heart skipped a beat. My parents lived in Minnesota. Why was a hospital calling me in Seattle? I picked it up. Hello. This is Olivia. Miss Quincy. The voice on the other end was a woman. She sounded tired and serious. This is Dr. Evans from the emergency department at Mayo. I'm calling about your father. The wine glass felt cold in my hand. My father, is he okay? Your father has suffered a massive ischemic stroke, the doctor said. Her words were direct, sharp, and brutal. He is in critical condition. We have him stabilized, but there is significant brain swelling. We need a family member here, immediately. I stood up. The wine sloshed over the rim of the glass and stained my white rug. I didn't care. I'm coming, I said. I'm in Seattle, I'll get the next flight. There is something else, the doctor said. There was a pause, a terrible, heavy silence. What? I asked. My voice trembled. Your mother brought him in, Dr. Evans said. While she was in the waiting room, she collapsed. We ran some emergency scans because she was complaining of severe abdominal pain. Is she okay? I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. Miss Quincy, your mother has stage 4 pancreatic cancer. It appears the stress of your father's event caused a rupture. She is in surgery right now. I couldn't breathe. The room started to spin. The beautiful view of Seattle blurred into streaks of light. Both of them, I whispered. Both of them, the doctor confirmed. You need to get here now. I hung up the phone. I stood there in my beautiful apartment, in my tailored suit, and I felt my entire life crumbling into dust. I didn't sleep. I threw clothes into a suitcase. I didn't pack for a vacation. I grabbed sweatpants, t-shirts, comfortable shoes. I grabbed my laptop. I grabbed my charger. I didn't know it then, but I was packing away my freedom. I drove to the airport at midnight. The The roads were empty. It was raining, the typical Seattle drizzle that usually made me feel calm. Now, it felt like the world was crying. I left my car in the long-term parking lot. I ran through the terminal. The flight was 4 hours. I sat in the middle seat. I didn't watch a movie. I didn't read. I just stared at the seatback in front of me praying, "Please let them be alive. Please let them be alive." When I landed in Minneapolis, it was morning. The sky was gray. It was freezing cold. I rented the cheapest car available and drove straight to Rochester. The hospital was a city unto itself. It was huge, sterile, and intimidating. I ran to the reception desk. "Robert and Martha Quincy," I said, out of breath. The receptionist typed on her computer. She looked up at me with pity in her eyes. "ICU West, both of them." I took the elevator up. The hallway smelled like antiseptic and old coffee. I hated that smell. It was the smell of sickness. I found my father's room first. He was hooked up to so many machines I could barely see him. There was a tube in his throat. His face was slack on one side. He looked small. He had always been a big man, a loud man, a man who commanded rooms. Now he was just a body in a bed, fighting for air. I held his hand. It was cold. "Dad," I whispered. He didn't move. The monitor beeped, a steady, rhythmic sound that would become the soundtrack of my life. I went to the next room. My mother was there. She was awake, but her skin was yellow, jaundice. She looked terrified. "Olivia," she croaked. Her voice was weak. "I'm here, Mom," I said. I pulled a chair close to her bed. "I'm here." "Your father," she cried. Tears ran down her face. "Is he gone?" "No," I said, squeezing her hand. "He's right next door. He's fighting." "I hurt," she whispered. "I hurt so much." "I know," I said. "The doctors are helping." For the next 48 hours, I didn't sleep. I ran back and forth between their rooms. I spoke to neurologists. I spoke to oncologists. I signed consent forms. I learned words I never wanted to know. Tracheostomy, G-tube, metastasis, palliative. My phone kept buzzing in my pocket. Emails from work. My team needed me. The investors had questions. I walked out to the hospital hallway. I sat on the floor near the vending machines. I opened my laptop. The screen was bright and jarring. I looked at the code I had written just 2 days ago. It looked like a foreign language. It looked meaningless. Who cared about AI diagnostics when my father couldn't swallow? Who cared about stock options when my mother was dying? I called Sarah, my boss. "Olivia," she said, "where are you? We have the integration meeting in an hour." "I can't make it," I said. My voice was dull. "I'm at the Mayo Clinic, my parents. It's bad, Sarah, it's really bad." "Oh, Olivia, I'm so sorry," she said. "Take the week off. We can cover for you." "A week won't be enough," I said. I looked through the glass door of the ICU. I saw a nurse suctioning my father's breathing tube. I saw the fear in my mother's eyes as she tried to sit up. They had nobody else. "What do you mean?" Sarah asked. "My brother is gone," I said. "Nobody knows where Ben is. He's been an addict for 10 years. It's just me. I'm the only one." "Olivia, you have a career," Sarah said gently. "You have a life here. You can hire nurses. You can put them in a facility." "I can't," I said, and I knew it was true. My father was proud. He would hate a facility. My mother was scared. She needed a hand to hold. "I can't leave them." "So, what are you saying?" I took a deep breath. I looked at the exit sign down the hall. I imagined walking out, getting on a plane, and going back to my apartment with the view. It was a nice fantasy. "I need to take a leave of absence," I said. "Indefinite." "Olivia," Sarah warned. "If you leave indefinitely, we can't hold your position. You know the policy. You'll lose the promotion. You might lose your job." "I know," I said. Tears finally stung my eyes. "I know." "Are you sure?" I looked at my parents. They were broken. They were helpless. They were my family. "I'm sure," I said. I hung up the phone. I felt a piece of me die in that moment. Olivia the engineer was gone. Olivia the caregiver was born. A week later, I flew back to Seattle for one day. I packed up my apartment. I sold my furniture for cash. I broke my lease and paid the penalty. I packed my clothes into boxes. I drove my car to a dealership and sold it. I took one last look at the view of the Space Needle. I said goodbye to the silence. I said goodbye to the peace. I flew back to Minnesota with 2 suitcases. I took an Uber to my parents' house. It was a big mansion, but it felt cold. It felt empty. I walked up the stairs to my childhood bedroom. It was exactly as I had left it when I was 18. The walls were still pale pink. There were old posters of bands I didn't listen to anymore. The bed was a twin size. The carpet was worn. I put my suitcase on the bed. I opened it. I took out my sweatpants and my t-shirts. I put them in the dresser drawers that used to hold my high school uniforms. I looked in the mirror. I looked tired. I looked older. I walked down the hall to my parents' room. It was empty. They were still in the hospital, but soon they would be home, and this house would become a hospital. I went into my father's home office. It was a mess. Papers were everywhere. Unopened bills, contracts. The company he had built, Quincy Medical Supply, was bleeding. I could see it just by looking at the stack of urgent notices on his desk. The phone on his desk rang. I picked it up. "Mr. Quincy?" a man asked. "This is the bank. We're calling about the overdraft on the business account." "Mr. Quincy is unavailable," I said. My voice was firm, even though I was shaking. "I'm his daughter. I'm handling his affairs." "We need a payment today," the man said. "Or we freeze the assets." I looked at the messy desk. I looked at the photos of our family on the wall. There was me, smiling at graduation. There was Ben, looking handsome and trouble-free in a tuxedo from years ago. "I'll handle it," I said. I sat down in my father's leather chair. It was too big for me. I opened his laptop. I guessed his password. It was Benon 123. Of course it was. I logged into his bank accounts. I logged into the company email. I realized then that the medical crisis was only half the problem. The business was falling apart. My father had been slipping for months, maybe years, and nobody had noticed. I had a choice. I could let it all burn. I could let the house go into foreclosure, let the company go bankrupt, put my parents in a state-run nursing home, and go back to Seattle. But I was a fixer. That's what engineers do. We fix broken systems. I pulled my hair back into a ponytail. I took a deep breath. "Okay," I said to the empty room. "I'll fix this." I didn't know it would take 5 years. I didn't know it would cost me my youth, my happiness, and my savings. I didn't know that while I was saving them, they were just waiting for Ben. I just knew I had to work. I started organizing the papers. I made a spreadsheet. I called the bank back. That night I slept in my childhood bed. The mattress was lumpy. The house creaked. I missed my apartment. I missed the rain in Seattle. I missed my life. But I was here. And I wasn't going anywhere. The next 5 years blurred into one long, gray nightmare. Time stopped meaning anything. There were no weekends. There were no holidays. There was only the schedule of medication and the schedule of payroll. My parents came home from the hospital 3 months after the stroke and the surgery. They were not the same people. My father, once a booming giant of a man, was now confined to a wheelchair. He couldn't speak clearly. He made frustrated, guttural sounds. He needed a tracheostomy tube in his throat to breathe. My mother was frail. The chemotherapy made her sick. It made her hair fall out in clumps. She spent her days in a recliner, covered in blankets, shivering even when the heat was turned up to 80 degrees. I became a nurse. I didn't have a degree, but I learned. I had to. The home health aides were unreliable. They would call in sick. They would quit. They would arrive late, so I took over. I learned how to suction my father's throat. It was a terrible, wet sound. I had to stick a plastic tube down his windpipe and vacuum out the mucus so he didn't choke. I did this every 4 hours, even at 3 a.m. I would wake up to the sound of him coughing, and I would run down the hall in my pajamas, my eyes burning with exhaustion. I learned how to mix my mother's IV fluids. I learned how to clean the port in her chest. I learned how to change diapers on adults who were once too proud to ask for help. I slept on a recliner in the living room between their bedrooms. I stopped sleeping in a bed. I needed to be close enough to hear them. For 300 nights that first year, I didn't sleep for more than 2 hours at a time. But the medical care was only half the battle. During the day, while they napped, I drove to the Quincy Medical Supply office. The company was in chaos. When I first walked in as the acting CEO, the employees looked at me with skepticism. I was the daughter, the computer girl from Seattle. What did I know about manufacturing medical braces and hospital linens? I knew nothing, but I learned. I sat in my father's office, surrounded by stacks of paper. I read every contract. I read every invoice. I found mistakes. I found money that was owed to us. I called insurance companies and yelled at them until they paid. I saved the factory. In my 3rd year home, the supply chain collapsed. We couldn't get the raw cotton we needed for the hospital gowns. Our biggest client, a hospital chain in Chicago, threatened to cancel our contract. I flew to Chicago. I looked the hospital administrators in the eye. I didn't have a fancy suit anymore. I was wearing clothes from Target because I hadn't shopped in years. But I had the desperation of a woman who had nothing left to lose. I will get you the product, I told them. Give me 2 weeks. If I'm late, you don't pay. I flew to a supplier in Mexico. I used my Spanish from high school and Google Translate. I negotiated a deal in a dusty warehouse. I got the cotton. We fulfilled the order. I worked 18-hour days. I ate vending machine crackers for lunch. I stopped dating. I stopped calling my friends in Seattle. I didn't have time for their stories about vacations and promotions. My life was poop, blood, spreadsheets, and fear. Both of my parents were too weak to sign anything. The lawyers came to the house. They looked at my father, drooling in his chair. They looked at my mother, asleep from morphine. Miss Quincy, the lawyer said, you need full authority. I signed the papers. I became the legal guardian of the estate. I became the decision maker. I had the power to sell the house, sell the company, do whatever I wanted. I didn't sell anything. I protected it. I grew it. Under my leadership, the company stabilized. We started making a profit again. I hired 10 new people. I updated the computer systems using my tech background. I told my parents about the wins during dinner. I would feed my father spoonfuls of mashed potatoes. Dad, I'd say, we got the Chicago contract renewed. Revenue is up 20%. He would just stare at the TV. Mom, I'd say, I found a new supplier. We're saving 10 grand a month. She would sigh and adjust her wig. That's nice, Olivia. Did Ben call? That was the knife in my heart. Ben, my brother. For 5 years, he was a ghost. We knew he was alive because occasionally a police station in a different state would call. Arizona, Nevada, New Mexico, petty theft, drug possession, public intoxication. I paid his bail twice. I paid for a rehab center in Tucson that cost $30,000. He checked out after 3 days and disappeared again. He never called to ask how Dad was. He never asked if Mom was in pain. He never asked how I was doing. I was drowning, keeping their world afloat with my bare hands, and all they wanted to know was where Ben was. It happened on a Tuesday in November. I was in the kitchen, washing the blender I used to make my father's protein shakes. The house was quiet. My parents were in the living room watching a game show. The doorbell rang. I wiped my hands on a towel and went to answer it. I wasn't expecting anyone. I opened the heavy oak door. There he was, Ben. He looked good. That was the first shock. I expected him to look sick, thin, or dirty, but he was tan. He had put on muscle. He was wearing a clean button-down shirt and nice jeans. He was holding a leather duffel bag. Hey, Liv, he said. He flashed that smile, the charming, crooked smile that had always gotten him out of trouble. I stood frozen in the doorway. Ben, surprise, he said. He pushed past me. He didn't ask if he could come in. He just walked into the house like he had never left, like he hadn't been missing for 2 years this time. Mom. Dad, he called out. I heard my mother gasp from the living room. Benny, I watched from the hallway. Ben walked into the living room and dropped his bag. My mother actually tried to stand up from her chair. She was crying instantly. My boy, she sobbed. My beautiful boy. Ben knelt beside her and hugged her. Then he looked at Dad. My father's eyes were wide. He was making a noise I hadn't heard in years, a happy noise. He was trying to reach out his good hand. Hey, Pop, Ben said. I'm home, I'm back for good. I stood in the archway, invisible. I waited for the questions. I waited for them to ask him where he had been, why he hadn't called, why he left me to wipe their chins and pay their bills alone. But the questions never came. Instead, the rewriting of history began immediately. That night at dinner, Ben told a story. He didn't talk about rehab. He didn't talk about jail. I was in Phoenix, Ben said, cutting a piece of steak. I was doing some consulting, networking, learning the real estate market. I just needed to clear my head, to be a better man for this family. Of course, my mother said, nodding eagerly. You needed time. That's smart, Benny, very smart. I dropped my fork. It clattered loudly on the plate. He was in jail, Mom, I said. My voice was sharp. I paid the bail. He wasn't networking. The table went silent. My mother looked at me with ice in her eyes. Olivia, don't be negative. Your brother is home. Let's focus on the positive. But, enough, my father grunted. It was one of the few words he could say clearly. The next morning, I got ready for work. I put on my blazer. I grabbed my car keys. I walked into the kitchen to get coffee. Ben was there. He was wearing one of my father's old suits. It fit him perfectly. He was drinking coffee out of my favorite mug. Morning, Liv, he said. Mom said I should come in with you today, get the lay of the land. I felt a cold prickle on the back of my neck. Come in with me. To the office? Yeah, he said. Dad thinks it's time I stepped up, take some of the load off you. I don't need the load taken off, I said. I've been running it alone for 5 years. I have systems, I have a team. Relax, he laughed. I'm just observing. He didn't just observe. When we walked into the office, he acted like he owned the place. He shook hands with the employees I had hired. He sat in the conference room and interrupted me during the morning briefing. Why are we using that vendor? He asked in front of everyone. Seems expensive. Because they deliver on time, I said through gritted teeth. And quality matters. I bet I can find someone cheaper, he announced. The worst part was that the employees, some of them, loved it. Ben was charismatic. He was a man. He was a Quincy. I was the tired, strict daughter who watched the pennies. He was the fresh energy. By the end of the week, things started changing. I tried to log into the bank account to approve payroll. Access denied. I frowned and typed the password again. Access denied. I called the bank. This is Olivia Quincy. I can't access the business account. Oh, Miss Quincy, the banker said. We received a form this morning from Robert Quincy. He updated the authorized users. You were removed. I have power of attorney, I shouted. The account holder can revoke access at any time if they are deemed competent, the banker said. Your father signed it in person. I hung up. I felt sick. My father couldn't drive. Ben must have driven him to the bank. Ben must have guided his hand to sign the paper. I stormed into my father's office, my office. Ben was sitting in the chair. My chair? What did you do? I demanded. Calm down, Liv, Ben said. He didn't even look up from the computer. Dad and I talked. We think you're burned out. You look tired. Really tired? I'm tired because I saved this family, I screamed. My mother walked in. She must have come with them. She was standing by the door, leaning on her cane. Olivia, she said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. Don't yell. It's unladylike. Mom, he locked me out of the bank accounts. Your brother is the man of the house, she said. She smiled at Ben. It's his birthright, honey. You've done enough. You were a great helper, but Ben is here now. He can take it from here. Helper, that's what I was to them. I wasn't the CEO. I wasn't the savior. I was the help. And the help was no longer needed. The transition wasn't a clean break. It was a slow, humiliating erasure. They didn't fire me. That would have been too legally messy. And perhaps, deep down, they knew Ben couldn't actually run the software systems I had built. Instead, they pushed me into the shadows. We need the big office for Ben, my mother told me a week later. He needs space to meet with clients. You understand. I was moved to a cubicle in the back corner near the break room. It was a desk usually reserved for interns. It had a stain on the carpet and a wobbly chair. I sat there, staring at the gray fabric wall, listening to the sound of the microwave beeping. I became a ghost in my own company. Employees who used to come to me for approval now walked past my desk without making eye contact. They were afraid. They saw the power shift. They knew that to be on Ben's side was the only way to keep their jobs. I heard them whispering in the break room. Ben promised us a bonus. Ben says Olivia was holding us back. Ben is going to take us global. Ben was going to bankrupt us, but nobody wanted to hear that. I watched from my corner as Ben destroyed everything I built. He canceled the contract with the reliable Mexican supplier and switched to a cheaper one in Vietnam to save money. The shipments arrived 3 weeks late, and the quality was terrible. He fired the operations manager, a woman named Karen who had been my right hand, because she corrected him in a meeting. He replaced her with one of his buddies from Phoenix. I tried to talk to my father. I went home early one day and sat by his wheelchair. Dad, I said softly, Ben is making mistakes. We lost the Minneapolis general account yesterday. My father looked at me. His eyes were hard. Ben learning, he grunted. Give. Time? We don't have time, I said. He's spending money we don't have. He bought a company car, a Porsche. Dad, the company pays for that. He, CEO, my father said. He turned his head away from me. You, jealous. I walked out of the room. I went to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of tap water. My hand was shaking so hard the water spilled down my chin. The final straw happened 2 months after Ben returned. I walked into the office on a Monday morning. There was a maintenance guy standing on a ladder outside the main executive office, the one that used to be mine. He was drilling holes in the wall. What are you doing? I asked. Putting up the new sign, the guy said. He held it up. It was a heavy, expensive brass plaque. Benjamin Quincy, CEO and President Future of Quincy Medical. My mother was standing there, watching. She clapped her hands together. Doesn't it look wonderful? She asked me. I ordered it myself. He's not the CEO, I said quietly. Dad is the CEO. Dad is retiring, Mom said casually. He's signing the papers next week. He's giving it all to Ben. The shares, the voting rights, everything. It's time for the next generation. I am the next generation, I whispered. Mom laughed. It was a light, airy laugh that made me want to scream. Oh, Olivia, you know what I mean. The name, the legacy. It has to be Ben, it's always been Ben. She touched my cheek, her hand was cold. You should be happy, now you can, I don't know, find a husband. You look so tired all the time. She turned back to admire the sign. I stood there in the hallway. I looked at the employees pretending to work. I looked at the brass plaque. I looked at my mother's back. Something inside me snapped. It wasn't a loud snap. It wasn't an explosion. It was a quiet, clean break. I stopped caring. I stopped worrying about the inventory. I stopped worrying about the bank balance. I stopped worrying about their approval. I turned around and walked to my cubicle. I sat down. I didn't cry. I had cried enough over the last 5 years. Crying was for victims. Crying was for daughters who wanted to be loved. I wasn't a daughter anymore. I was a stranger. I opened my laptop. I didn't open the company email. I opened a blank document. I started typing. I wasn't going to fight them for the company. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to let them have exactly what they wanted. And while they were celebrating, I was going to ensure that when they finally looked down, they would realize they were standing on a trapdoor. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I had saved years ago. Hello, a voice answered. Peterson Estate Law. Hi, I said. My voice was calm, my voice was steady. This is Olivia Quincy. I need an appointment, immediately. Regarding what, Miss Quincy? Regarding a trust, I said. And a transfer of assets. I looked at the future CEO sign one last time. I need to make sure, I told the lawyer, that it's ironclad. The meeting with the attorney took place on a rainy Thursday. I took a half-day off work. I told Ben I had a dentist appointment. He didn't even look up from his phone to acknowledge me. Mr. Peterson was an old-school lawyer. His office smelled like leather books and pipe tobacco. He had known my father for 30 years, but he was a man of the law first. He knew about the stroke. He knew about the chaos. I sat across from his massive mahogany desk. I placed a folder in front of him. Olivia, he said, taking off his reading glasses. It's good to see you. How are your parents? They are, adjusting, I said carefully. Mr. Peterson, I need to review the power of attorney documents I signed 5 years ago. Specifically, the durability clauses. He pulled the file. Well, they are standard. You have full durable power of attorney for both finances and healthcare. This was essential when your father was incapacitated. And has it been revoked? I asked. He looked through the recent filings. No, your father updated the bank signature cards last week to add Ben, but he never filed the legal revocation of your POA. To do that, he would need to be deemed fully competent by a physician and file a specific legal document with the county. He hasn't done that, I said. He can't. His neurologist still has him listed as cognitively impaired due to the aphasia and memory gaps. Then you still have full control, Mr. Peterson said. Legally, you are still the voice of Robert Quincy. I nodded. My heart was beating slow and hard. Good, then I have some transactions I need to execute today. What kind of transactions? I want to create a trust, I said. The Quincy Health Foundation Irrevocable Trust. Irrevocable, Mr. Peterson raised an eyebrow. Olivia, that means once the assets are in, they can't be taken out. Not by you, not by your father. It locks everything down. I know, I said. That's the point. I explained the situation. I didn't cry. I didn't complain about my feelings. I just laid out the facts. Ben was draining the company accounts. He was making reckless decisions. My parents were letting him do it because they were blinded by favoritism. If I did nothing, the company would be bankrupt in 6 months, and my parents would be destitute. I need to protect the assets, I said. Not for me, for the employees, and for my parents' future care even if they don't want it. Mr. Peterson listened. He nodded slowly. And what do you want to transfer into this trust? The voting shares, I said. 98% of Quincy Medical Supply stock, and the deeds to the factory and the land. Mr. Peterson whistled low. That leaves your father and Ben with no control. They will be employees, nothing more. They are destroying the company, I repeated. I am saving it. Is it legal? With your power of attorney, yes, it is entirely legal. You are acting in the best financial interest of the estate by preventing waste. Do it, I said. For the next 3 weeks, I lived a double life. By day, I went to the office. I sat in my cubicle. I watched Ben strut around in his suits. I watched him sign deals that I knew were bad. I watched my mother come in and rearrange the furniture in his office, talking about how proud she was. I bit my tongue. I made coffee. I smiled when they ignored me. By night, I was building my exit. I didn't just stop at the trust. I knew that once I pulled this trigger, I couldn't work there anymore. I would be fired immediately. I needed a landing pad. I incorporated a new company, Quincy Health Systems, LLC. It was just a shell company, registered in my name only. I used my own savings, what little I had left, to pay for the registration and the server space. I started contacting the old clients, the ones Ben had alienated, the hospital in Chicago, the clinic network in Seattle. I used my personal email. Subject, a new venture, body. I am leaving Quincy Medical Supply to start a dedicated AI-driven logistics firm. I know the supply chain. I know your needs. If you are unhappy with the recent service changes, let's talk. The responses came back within hours. Thank God, Olivia, the new shipments are garbage. When can you start? We trust you, not your brother. We're in. I was building a raft while the Titanic was sinking. The final piece of the puzzle was the timing. My father had planned a massive dinner party to announce the official handover of the company to Ben. He wanted to do it on his birthday. He invited everyone, the board of directors, the extended family, the local press. It was the perfect stage. 2 days before the party, the paperwork for the trust was finalized. I met Mr. Peterson one last time. Once you sign this, he warned me, the shares are gone, they belong to the trust. You are appointing a neutral third party, me as the trustee. You are cutting your family off from their own wealth. I'm stopping them from burning it, I corrected him. I signed the papers. The ink looked black and permanent. Mr. Peterson stamped it, filed. I walked out of his office into the sunlight. I felt lighter than I had in 5 years. I went to a stationery store. I bought a single envelope, red. I bought a stick of red wax. I went home. I packed my bags quietly. I moved my important things, my birth certificate, my passport, my hard drives into the trunk of my car. I printed out the confirmation of the trust transfer. I folded it neatly. I put it in the red envelope. I melted the wax and sealed it. I placed it on my dresser. The night of the party arrived. I put on a black dress. It was simple, severe. I put on lipstick for the first time in years. I looked in the mirror. I didn't see the tired caregiver anymore. I saw the woman who had negotiated with cartels in Mexico for cotton. I saw the engineer. I went downstairs. The house was full of people. Music was playing. Waiters were passing champagne. Ben was in the center of the room, laughing loudly. My parents were sitting on thrones, high-backed velvet chairs they had rented for the occasion. Olivia, my Aunt Susan called out. Grab a tray, honey, help the waiters. I looked at her. No, she blinked. Excuse me. I'm not working tonight, I said. I walked past her. I walked into the dining room. I found my seat. It was at the far end of the table, near the kitchen door. Ben's seat was at the head next to Dad. I sat down. I placed the red envelope on my lap. I waited. The dinner was elaborate. Lobster, steak, expensive wine that I knew the company couldn't afford. I ate nothing. I drank water. I watched the people around the table. My cousins were texting. The board members looked uncomfortable. They knew the numbers were bad, even if my father wouldn't admit it. They were eating the free food, but their eyes were darting around nervously. Finally, the speeches began. My mother went first. She cried. She talked about legacy and strength. She talked about how Ben was the sunshine of the family. She didn't mention my name once. Then my father stood up. He used his cane to steady himself. The room went silent. Tonight, he bellowed, his voice slightly slurred but loud. Tonight is a historic night. I built this company from nothing, and tonight I give it to the only person worthy of carrying the name. He raised his glass to Ben, to Benjamin, the new owner, the new CEO. The company, the houses, the $96 million in assets all belongs to Ben. He deserves it more than you ever did, Olivia, my mother added loudly, looking right at me. The room clapped. It was a polite, forced applause, but Ben soaked it up. He stood and bowed. He looked like he had won a lottery he didn't buy a ticket for. I stood up. My chair scraped loudly against the floor. The applause died down. People turned to look at me. They expected a toast, or maybe a tantrum. I walked the length of the long table. My heels clicked on the hardwood. Click, click, click. I stopped in front of my father and Ben. I reached into my bag. Congratulations, I said. I placed the items on the table. The medical power of attorney, the financial power of attorney, the keys to the house, the keys to the safe, and the red envelope. What is this? Ben asked, laughing nervously. A gag gift? It's my resignation, I said, and a notification. My father looked at the keys. He looked confused. Olivia, sit down, you're embarrassing us. I'm leaving, I said. I'm done. I'm done fixing your mistakes. I'm done wiping your mouths. I'm done saving this company. You can't leave, my mother snapped. Who will drive us to therapy tomorrow? Call an Uber, I said. My father reached for the red envelope. He tore it open with his good hand. The wax cracked. He pulled out the document. He adjusted his glasses. He started to read. I saw his face change. The color drained out of his cheeks. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. What is it? Ben asked. He grabbed the paper from Dad's hand. Ben read it. Trust. What is this? Irrevocable trust. He looked up at me, his eyes wide with panic. What did you do? I transferred the voting shares, I said calmly. Yesterday. Using the power of attorney you forgot to revoke. The company is now owned by the Quincy Health Foundation. It is managed by an independent trustee. You gave my company away, Ben screamed. I saved the company, I said. I gave it to a trust so you couldn't bankrupt it. You can't sell the assets. You can't spend the accounts. You can't even fire anyone without the trustee's approval. You bitch, Ben lunged at me. My uncle grabbed him and held him back. And one more thing, I said, addressing the room. The bank accounts for the future CEO fund, I froze those too, pending an audit for embezzlement. Suddenly, phones started buzzing around the table. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The board members were checking their emails. They were getting the automated notifications from the bank and the legal team. My card just got declined at the bar, my cousin shouted from the back of the room. Payroll is suspended, the HR director whispered, looking at her phone. You ruined us, my mother shrieked. She stood up, clutching her chest. How could you? We are your family. No, I said. You are my relatives. You stopped being my family the day you erased me. My mother's eyes rolled back in her head. She collapsed into her chair, gasping for air. It was a panic attack, not a heart attack. I knew the difference after 5 years of nursing her. Call 911, someone shouted. My father was shaking the paper in the air. Undo it, Olivia, undo it now. I can't, I said. It's irrevocable. That's what the word means, Dad, it's done. I turned my back on them. The room was in chaos. People were shouting. Ben was throwing glasses against the wall. My mother was wailing. I walked to the door. I walked out of the mansion. The night air was cool and crisp. I took a deep breath. It smelled like rain and freedom. I got into my car. I didn't look back at the house. I drove down the long driveway, past the gate, and onto the main road. I drove to a hotel downtown. I checked into a room on the top floor. I ordered room service. A burger and fries. I sat by the window and watched the city lights. My phone blew up with calls and texts. Ben, Mom, Dad, Aunt Susan. Blocked, 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 blocked. I took a bite of my burger. It was the best thing I had ever tasted. The next morning, the sun rose bright and clear. I woke up in the hotel bed. For the first time in 5 years, I didn't have to wake up to check an oxygen monitor. I didn't have to rush to the office. I turned on the TV. The local news was on. Drama at Quincy Medical, the anchor announced. Local manufacturing giant freezes operations overnight amidst family legal dispute. The image on the screen showed the factory gates. They were chained shut. There was a sign posted by the bank, assets frozen pending audit. I saw employees standing in the parking lot. Some were crying. I felt a pang of guilt for them. They were innocent. I picked up my laptop. I logged into my new email, the Quincy Health Systems LLC account. I had work to do. I sent an email to the HR manager at the old company. I knew she was a good woman, a single mom who worked hard. Subject: a job offer. Body: Sarah, I know things are chaotic. I am starting a new firm. I need an operations lead. Same salary plus 10%. Can you start Monday? Bring the best 5 engineers with you. She replied in 3 minutes. Yes. We are walking out now. Where do we go? I rented a co-working space downtown. By noon, I had my core team back. We didn't have a factory, but we had the brains. We had the contacts. Meanwhile, my family was drowning. My father filed 3 lawsuits against me in the first week. He hired expensive lawyers, or tried to. He had to use his personal credit cards because the company accounts were locked by the trustee. I went to court for the preliminary hearing. I wore a navy blue suit. I sat alone. My father was there in his wheelchair, looking furious. Ben was beside him, looking hungover and disheveled. The judge read the documents. "Mr. Quincy," the judge said, peering over his glasses, "this power of attorney is valid. It grants Olivia Quincy unrestricted authority to manage assets for the protection of the estate. She transferred the assets into a trust that benefits you. She didn't steal the money, she secured it." "She stole my company," my father yelled. "She protected it from mismanagement," the judge said. "I've seen the financial reports your son generated in 2 months. You were hemorrhaging cash. Case dismissed." My father slammed his hand on the table. Ben put his head in his hands. Outside the courtroom, my mother tried to approach me. She looked old, her wig was crooked. "Olivia," she said, her voice was trembling, "please. We can't access the accounts. We can't pay the mortgage on the mansion. We can't buy groceries." "The trust pays you a monthly stipend," I said. "It's $2,000 a month. That's what the trustee determined is a reasonable living allowance." "2,000, she gasped. "That doesn't even cover the pool maintenance." "Then fire the pool boy," I said, "and sell the house. You don't need 8 bedrooms for 3 people." "But we're your parents." "And I was your daughter," I said. "But you fired me, remember? The help doesn't give loans." I walked away. The business world is fast and brutal. With Quincy Medical Supply frozen in legal battles and locked down by the trust, their clients had nowhere to go. My new company, Quincy Health Systems, was ready. We didn't manufacture the goods. We brokered them. I used my AI software to find other factories that had excess capacity. We became the middleman. We were faster, cheaper, and smarter. Within 3 months, we won the $62 million hospital contract that my family had assumed was theirs forever. I remember signing the contract. The hospital administrator shook my hand. "It's good to work with the brains of the operation," he said. "Your brother, he tried to sell us subpar linens at double the price. He was arrogant. He didn't know the business," I said simply. "Well, he's out of the game now," the administrator said. He was right. The collapse of my father's empire was swift. Because the trust held the assets, Ben couldn't use the company money to pay his personal debts. And he had a lot of debts. Gambling debts, dealer debts. The future CEO couldn't pay his car lease. The Porsche was repossessed in the company parking lot. People took videos. It went viral locally. I watched it on my phone in my new office. I didn't laugh. I just felt a cold, final sense of closure. One night, I got an email from my mom. It was sent from a public library computer. "Subject, please, content, Olivia, please call us. Dad is depressed. Ben is acting crazy. We are sorry for everything. We love you. Please help us." I looked at the cursor blinking on the screen. "We love you." They didn't love me. They loved my utility. They loved that I could fix things. They missed the mechanic, not the daughter. I moved the mouse. I clicked the trash icon. Delete. I didn't block the sender this time. I just wanted them to know that I read it, and I chose silence. 6 months later, the inevitable happened. The bank foreclosed on the mansion. The trust protected the company assets, but the house was in my father's personal name, and without the massive salary he used to draw from the company, he couldn't pay the mortgage. I didn't go to the auction, but I heard about it. Strangers walked through my childhood home. They bought the furniture. They bought the dining table where my father had given my inheritance to Ben. They bought the bed I had slept in for 5 years. It went for a fraction of its value. My parents had to move. They couldn't afford a luxury condo. They couldn't even afford a nice apartment because their credit was ruined. They moved into a 2-bedroom apartment above a laundromat on the south side of the city. It was a walk-up. My father in his wheelchair had to be carried up the stairs by a neighbor. I heard this from a cousin who still talked to me. "It's bad, Olivia," she told me. "The place smells like detergent and fried food. Your mom is washing dishes by hand. Dad just sits by the window." "And Ben?" I asked. "Ben is the worst part," she whispered. "Ben didn't handle the fall well. Without the money, without the status, without the CEO title, he crumbled. He started using again. He stole my mother's jewelry. The diamond earrings my father gave her for their 40th anniversary. Ben pawned them for $300. He stole the cash from my father's wallet, the little bit of stipend money they had. It culminated on a Tuesday night. Ben got high. He got paranoid. He went back to the old factory, which was now shuttered and silent. He tried to break in. He thought there was cash in the safe. He smashed a window. The silent alarm tripped. The police arrived. Ben fought them. He was screaming that he owned the place. He was screaming that he was the king. They tasered him. He was arrested for burglary, trespassing, and assaulting an officer. Because of his prior record, and because he was on probation from Arizona, the judge wasn't lenient. He was sentenced to 4 years in a state penitentiary. My parents were in the courtroom. They couldn't afford a private lawyer for him this time. They had to use a public defender. My mother cried. My father just stared at the floor. I wasn't there. I was in a meeting with investors from Japan. When I heard the news, I paused. I looked out the window of my conference room. "Is everything okay, Miss Quincy?" one of the investors asked. "Yes," I said, turning back to the screen. Just a loose end being tied up. My parents were now alone, truly alone. They were living on food stamps, SNAP. They kept the thermostat at 62 degrees to save money on heating. I sent them a package once. It was anonymous. It contained winter coats and a space heater. I didn't put a note. I didn't want to thank you. I just didn't want them to freeze. That was the last vestige of the daughter I used to be. The company Quincy Medical Supply was eventually liquidated by the trustee. The assets were sold off to pay creditors. The brand ceased to exist. The name Quincy no longer meant medical giant. It meant cautionary tale. But my name was rising. My company, Quincy Health Systems, was growing 200% year over year. We were agile. We were modern. We were honest. I hired back almost all of the old employees. I gave them raises. I gave them respect. One day, I was driving past the laundromat where my parents lived. I don't know why I drove that way. Maybe I just needed to see it. I saw my mother walking out. She was carrying a plastic bag of groceries. She looked frail. She was wearing a coat that looked too big for her, the one I had sent. She looked up and saw my car. It was a nice car, a Tesla. She stopped. She squinted. She recognized me. She took a step toward the curb. She raised her hand like she was going to wave, or maybe beg. I didn't slow down. I kept my eyes on the road. I drove past her. I watched her in the rearview mirror until she was just a small, gray dot. Then I turned the corner, and she was gone. It is 5 years later. I am standing in my office on the 42nd floor of the IDS Center in downtown Minneapolis. The city looks like a toy set from up here. The cars are tiny specks. The people are invisible. My company is now valued at $1.9 billion. We are the leading medical logistics provider in the Midwest. I have 380 employees. They are happy. They have full benefits. They have a CEO who knows their names. I turn away from the window and look at my office. It is modern, clean, and minimalist. There are no pictures of my family on the desk. There is no clutter. On the wall, there is a framed article from Forbes. The Silent Architect: How Olivia Quincy Built an Empire from the Ashes. I walk to my desk. I have a meeting in 10 minutes with the board of the new clinics we are opening. I named the clinics the Martha Clinics, named after my mother's maiden name. People think it's a tribute. They think I forgave her. They think it's a sign of love. It's not, it's precision. My mother, Martha, was a woman who had no power. She gave it all to the men in her life. She let herself be erased. I named the clinics after her to remind myself of what I must never become. Every time I see that name on the building, I am reminded: do not be weak. Do not be silent when you should speak. Do not give your keys to someone who hasn't earned them. My phone rings. It's my assistant. "Miss Quincy, there is a call on line 2. It's a nursing home in St. Paul. They say they have your father." I pause. What do they want? They say he is trying to check himself out. He's confused. He's asking for his daughter. I look at the phone. I remember the suction machine. I remember the nights on the recliner. I remember the way he looked at Ben like he was the Messiah. "Tell them," I say, my voice steady and calm, "that his daughter doesn't live here anymore. Tell them to call his son. He's in Stillwater prison. He should be out in 6 months." "Are you sure?" the assistant asks. "I'm sure." I hang up. I feel no guilt. That part of me, the part that needed their approval, the part that bled for them, burned away a long time ago. I am not cold. I am just clear. I have a life now. I have friends who love me for me. I have a partner, David, who is an architect. He doesn't care about my money. He cares that I like to read on Sunday mornings. We are going to Italy next month. I pick up my tablet. The meeting is starting. I walk into the boardroom. 12 people stand up when I enter. They respect me. They listen to me. I sit at the head of the table. "Let's begin," I say. My voice is quiet. I don't need to shout. I don't need to bang on the table. I learned the most important lesson of all. Revenge isn't about screaming. It isn't about making a scene. It isn't about violence. Revenge is success. Revenge is living well. Revenge is looking at the people who said you were nothing and showing them that you are everything without saying a single word to them. I don't look back. I don't visit the laundromat. I don't visit the prison. I look forward. I check the stock price. It's up another 4% today. I smile. Quiet isn't weakness. Quiet is strategy. If someone ever treated you like you were easy to replace, tell me where you're watching from. And subscribe, more true stories are coming.